Hey, what are you doing?
I'm looking at this Facebook page about Ed Cavanaugh. Remember he was the guy that got lost in the El Dorado forest? Anyway, I've been following this page for 2 years now, and people are still talking about him. I mean, like, who was this guy? And I really want to make a documentary about this whole thing.
Well, why don't you then?
I mean, there's so many people involved in the story. He was a teacher, and a biker, and a motorcyclist, and he was into yoga and martial arts, and just talking to everybody that's involved is a lot of time and travel. Really, it's a question of money, and I just don't have the resources right now.
Wait. This is the guy that got lost on his dirt bike, right?
Yeah.
And the search started with his dirt bike friends, right?
Yeah.
You do know that we have a web series specifically featuring people in the motorcycle culture.
Huh. Why don't you put something together from the motorcycle angle?
I gotta tell you a story about a couple of guys. We got a show about bikes in a garage. Don't ask me why. I'm taking a shit. We're the Handsome Nation Motorcycle Club.
We're gonna ride up there and back up there.
Nature pics. Fucking Joey taking nature pics.
This is my mom's house, and she was renting it out, and then the renters moved and sat empty for a couple of years, and I was kind of back up here playing around a little bit, and she was trying to rent it with no luck, so I talked her into renting it to me and a group of friends.
The scheme was hatched that a group of us could rent the place and use it as our dirt bike kind of clubhouse, crash pad, ride base.
So that's kind of how the Ridge Riders came to be. It's just I needed to get a little group of people together to cover the rent.
A few people rotate in and out, but it's been the same core since the beginning. I think this is the 5th or 6th year. And it's a happy place for a lot of us.
The first time I think I came out here, I was pretty nervous, and I was asking around. It's like, you've ridden Baja? So like, how many times have you been to Baja? And one of them was like 15.
I'm not really a member. I'm not technically a darling of the cabin. I've always been Ed's friend, poaching his place, his spot here.
You know, if you were to have a riding clinic or something like that with the collective experience out here, it's a pretty amazing place to gain skills and go forward. Ed was kind of he was one of the guys in the front, a little bit of a kind of like a mountain goat, I would call him. On his YZ, he could get up anything. It was like kind of light and powerful and graceful.
I met Ed and I became teachers together just about 20 years ago. We were enrolled in a program at John Muir Elementary School in San Francisco. I had been off motorcycles for probably 20 years at that point. Ed had a little experience on motorcycles, mostly street bikes. Had been doing a lot of mountain biking at the time, a lot of mostly bicycles. But no, we weren't on two wheels together yet. That didn't happen until a little later. He parked an XR 600 in my garage for a couple weeks and said, the tank's full and the plate's current if you want to take it out a little bit. And sure enough, I'm a sucker for big dirt bikes, so I was hooked instantly, and that's what put me back on motorcycles after about a 20-year hiatus.
I met him a few times at parties in the city, and then he found out I was a motorcycle guy, and we did a couple of rides on the street, and then him and Matt got dirt bikes and started coming dirt bike riding with us. So I actually took Ed and Matt for like the first time on the real trails in the forest. They'd been on a couple of rides before, but not like the kind of the hardcore single track stuff. And the first couple of rides were a little bumpy because it's a steep learning curve. And then, it got better and better, and it's kind of, at the end, Ed was almost like the jefe of the group. He was, one of the faster, more skilled riders, and he was had lots of energy, so he kind of became one of the leaders. In the summer, because he was a teacher, he would have, summer break, and he was single, or not married, so he kind of would just freelance for the summer, go surfing, come riding. We'd hook up sometimes, he'd go camping. And that is actually part of why it took a little while to figure out that he was missing, because he had been out doing his thing in the summer. He went to Colorado to see his brother, and he came up here. He was thinking about going surfing somewhere else, so when he didn't check in for a few days, no one really thought too much of it, because he's just going to be doing something for the summer, and he'll be back when school starts.
He went up to the cabin that afternoon. I think he left around noon to go up there, and I was headed to a trip to Portland to see college friends and high school friends on the Thursday. So, and we had plans on the Sunday. So I heard from him Tuesday night and a little bit on Wednesday, just normal, like, hey, hi, good night, whatever. And then Thursday, I got an email from him that said that he might not make it back on Sunday because he was fixing this pump or well or something up at the cabin. And in the description of how he was fixing it, it sounded like there was somebody else up there with him fixing this well. And if they couldn't get the part, they might have to wait till Monday, and then he wouldn't be home for Sunday, but that he would, we would have a rain check on our date.
I was in Canada, actually, and for a month, and when I landed, I turned my phone on, and there was a bunch of messages and texts, and one of them was a text from Ed from just a couple days earlier, and he said that the water main had broke out by the driveway, and him and one of the neighbors up here got together and they fixed it.
I thought there was someone there with him, and I thought Joe was there on Saturday, so when I didn't hear from him Friday night, I just assumed that his phone had died, or he wasn't bothering to text me back, or he'd lost his phone or whatever. I wasn't so worried about his safety, even though I felt really like, that's just weird, it doesn't feel right, but I was like, well, he's up there with the guys, whatever. And I was in Portland with my friends, so I wasn't super concerned about it. And then Saturday, when I didn't hear from him, I got a little more worried because it just didn't feel, like him.
Our mutual friend that I referenced earlier called me at work one day and was like, hey, no one's heard from Ed, do you know where Ed is? And I kind of was like, he's camping, or he went surfing, or he didn't say anything. I didn't really, I kind of blew it off, actually. I was just like, well, he's doing his thing. And then I got another call from the same person saying, no, his girlfriend is really concerned. He hasn't checked in, like he's overdue, something's not right.
I got home from work and passed out on the couch, and about 11 my phone started blowing up, and with text messages, and people asking, had anybody heard from Ed?
That night I called the El Dorado County Sheriff and filed a missing persons report, and they came up here. The house was in a condition where he was clearly there but hadn't been there for a while. Like, the food was out and it was kind of decaying and rotting. His tools were out on the ground where he'd been working on his bike. His truck was parked, and it was clear that he was here, but he hadn't been here for days and days. And the sheriff reported that, and that night, Jason and I took off at like 2 in the morning and came up here.
Coming out of summer break, I was due to go back to work. I work in an elementary school in San Francisco, and I was awoken early that morning to a barrage of information, mostly from Facebook. Holy cow, we've established he's really missing from up in the cabin. We need everybody to get here immediately. You know, I know he's tough, I know he's got a lot of skills, but a week alone in the wilderness, on top of whatever mishap caused him to not return on his merry way, was had me pretty torn up. Pedal to the metal, tears coming out of my eyes, passing people like a maniac. The whole time thinking, how fast would he come up here to look for me?
El Dorado County, there is an intense search effort underway for a missing high school teacher from the Bay Area who has not been seen for 8 days now.
And that search is going on right now in and around the Rock Creek Trail system in the El Dorado National Forest, and that's some pretty steep terrain southeast of Georgetown.
My buddy had been missing for a whole week before we really got a search started in earnest. So that was Friday, and he had been missing since the Thursday of the previous week.
There were 3 of us. It was Jason and I and another guy, Matt Prentice. We came up with our bikes, and we were just gonna go ride the whole place and find Ed, because we figured he was gonna be somewhere easy to find. We're gonna roll out there, we're gonna find him, it's gonna be fine.
This particular trail, I had ridden it just like a month earlier, a couple months earlier, and I talked with Ed and I said, hey, because he had ridden the trail already, he told me about it. When you're looking for somebody, you can't really go too fast because you don't want to miss them. And so, we were trying to take our time and look everywhere, but we wanted to get over to that area because it just, I don't know, just my gut, So, we rode over there and we thought we cleared the trail. And then search and rescue came in immediately, and so they were in there, and they didn't want us in there because they were bringing dogs. So they brought dogs in, and then they cleared the trail.
By the end of that day, there was, probably another 6, 8, 10 people that showed up, and mostly motorcycle people, the Ridge Riders, and friends that could ride, because we thought we'd roll all the trails and just find them. And it kind of grew from there.
At that point, even the official search was just starting to muster, and so we were kind of briefing each other. We were sort of working out our relationship. That was the inception of the private search versus the professional search.
Everyone was just fucking confused. Like, here's this vast, gigantic forest, and this man who, for all intents and purposes, was thought of as being invincible, and the person who kept everyone safe and was the voice of reason was missing, and that made no sense. So he couldn't be missing far, right? He would just be on the side of the road, you'd find his bike, you'd see him, and that didn't happen. He wasn't right there, and just riding around on the trails didn't find him.
By the weekend, there was probably 40 people here camping in the yard and parking up and down the driveway, and just, how can we help?
I was here for a few days, and then I had to leave, and then I came back, and then I had to leave again. And so each, when I came back each time, it was like a small city getting bigger and bigger, and it was incredible. Random people, strangers that heard about it, or people, locals, some of the neighbors here who also know the trails, people on horseback, mountain bikers, people who were just four-wheelers, hikers. It was incredible. The coordination and the effort was mind-blowing. It was incredible to be part of that experience.
The ground we sit on around here became tent city. We overtaxed the water supply here to where we had to have water brought in. We had porta potties and eventually a shower brought in, because this turned into a village. And this was just our part of the search. The professional search was multiple counties and all the support systems that all that brought.
When it was all said and done, there was probably at least 100 plus volunteers that showed up from the Bay Area, and probably another dozen local people that never met Ed in their life, who just were kind of drawn into it and were impressed that Everyone was trying so hard.
Friends and family of a missing San Francisco teacher say they still have hope that he will be found alive. That's despite 2 weeks of searching in the El Dorado National Forest.
His friends believe that if anyone could survive 2 weeks in the deep backcountry, it would be Ed Cavanaugh. He's an avid outdoorsman and a wilderness instructor at Downtown High School. The biggest concern, Ed has diabetes and no one knows how much insulin he had with him when he went missing during a motorcycle ride on the trails 2 weeks ago. Many of those who are helping look for Ed are his fellow teachers and former students. The principal of his school says she's trying to remain positive.
I think regardless of the outcome, he was out there doing something that he really loved to do. And now with all this outpouring of love and support, we can see how many people love Ed. You know, I think it's really a positive testimony to Ed and his life.
I just felt like I really needed to be there to try to help him out for once, since he he's done so much for all the students and stuff. I felt like it was our turn for once to try to help him out.
There were so many people. There were strangers who came to search for him. There were his students, friends from all over the globe and different parts of his life, his family. It was amazing. Like I'd never experienced anything like that before. And it was pretty unconditional in terms of, everyone was there for one reason and things got set aside to just go find this guy. And it was overwhelmingly beautiful, really.
Some pretty talented people from the Bay Area got some fundraising going, and I think by the end they raised almost $40,000.
There are times when you found yourself happy because you're surrounded by some of your best friends around, and then you're snapped back to the reality of why we're all here.
And the sheriffs basically determined after 3 days that this was not a missing person search anymore. This was a body search. They were going to pull out, and there were too many people here for them to pull out. It was going to make them look bad, and they just kind of said, well, we're going to stick it out until either we find him or you guys give up. They were really great. I mean, but they stuck it out to the end too. People never gave up. That was a pretty impressive part, and I think that's why it was such a powerful thing. The momentum that was built, and it just kept going. And no one's giving up until we find him, even if he's not alive.
When we did recover him in the end, and the police, went through his phone, they finished his Strava ride, so we were able to see exactly what happened that day.
Ed had been riding with another guy. After lunch, the other guy, who was a local, had to go, so he went his way, and Ed decided to do some more riding. It was a very, very hot day. It looked like he tried to do some really challenging stuff on his own.
He chose to go up probably the hardest of the 4 Black Diamond trails out here. So I would say this is the hardest trail in the, hundreds and hundreds of miles of trails up here.
And it looked like he had gone, and he'd either, there's a place where you can make a wrong turn and get into some trouble, you can't get back out. And it looked like he had, made a mistake and couldn't get back up, and it looked like he tried to get back up a couple times.
To me, I think he got a combination of heat and a combination of a sugar issue, being diabetic, where I think he probably lost his bearing and lost some degree of consciousness, but was able to operate a clutch and a throttle, and was able to somehow strong this dirt bike off trail for what we figure was somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 hours.
When he gets like that, gets beyond a point where he can help himself anymore. Like, he needs to get some sugar, but if he doesn't have someone there to help him, it just kind of keeps getting worse and worse. And if you're under duress or stressing, your brain consumes a lot of energy and makes the problem worse because you're burning up all your blood sugar because you're stressed and thinking.
And he was so hard to find because he took himself so far out of the trail area. He took himself so far down into a wooded, untraversed area that even the helicopters and the drones flew right over him before they began the search.
This is where Ed and his friend parted ways, and here we go. That's just 2 minutes has passed, 5 minutes. You can see he makes it up there in less than 10 minutes. And then he spends, a good 7 or 8 minutes struggling on this hill climb that's pretty challenging. It looks like he tried to give it 2 or 3 attempts. And then he started going down here the wrong way. We'll never know why. Maybe he was sniffing out a new trail, or maybe he was just confused and disoriented. But from this point he spends about 2 hours to only make it a short distance.
Where he was found was pretty much close to like the original spot where we figured he would be. Mono and Jin were kind of, they were like a team of hikers. I mean, they had other people that went with them, but they were kind of the strongest hikers and kind of the most intuitive, and and Mono was one of his students. And I actually kind of had this feeling that if someone's going to find Ed, it's probably going to be Mono. They'd been hiking out there for 10 days, so I think they had gotten in tune with the forest and, had their senses were heightened. And they just went back there and looked around and kind of, started thinking, looking at it from a different perspective, and maybe he went off here and they found a track, like a single fresh track. And so they found that and they just kept going and, kind of used their intuition and just followed this track. And I'm not really sure how they figured out he was there, but they found him.
Today we are celebrating the boat that was built this semester with the Maritime Association. Ed started this program with another boat builder many years ago and has been producing with students these rowboats for many years. And so since Ed left, we haven't, there hasn't been one built. So today is the big day, and the kids produce a really amazing, beautiful boat, and we're celebrating that. And again, continuously celebrating Ed and his legacy that I get to be a part of.
He knew what everyone was capable of and held you to that as a student. If all you were capable of was getting a C, he knew that, but he made you work till you got the C. And if you were capable of getting an A and all you did was getting a C, he would bust you, he'd call you on it and be like, I'm not taking that. I know you can do way better than that. And I think he brought that out in a lot of kids, which was, I think, why so many of them showed up. And, there's a bunch of kids in San Francisco now that love tattoos. They all got tattoos for their teacher's name. Who does that?
We had a team Love Ed for the Tour de Cure, which is the American Diabetes Association bicycle ride. And that was pretty special to get back together with some of the people who had searched for him, and to raise money and have a collective experience again, just in his name and honor.
Being his good friend for almost 20 years, I was part of the teacher circle, I was part of the surfing circle. As he got into the motorcycle circle, I got into the motorcycle circle in the Bay Area, riding up here and such. I was never much of a martial artist. He and I did a little yoga together. And I did know about a lot of his circles. He and I later built choppers together to kind of deepen the motorcycle group. There's kind of the street riding group in the Bay Area scene, as well as the dirt riding group up here in a lot of different places. But yeah, I mean, circles are the only way to describe it. There's so many different facets to him.
Ed clearly touched a lot of people. I mean, he, in a way I felt kind of robbed at the end of the process, because I was like, wow, look at all these amazing friends Ed had that I didn't even know about. I wanted to be part of some of those circles, and just some really incredible people that I met here, and the stories, the backgrounds, and finding out more. I knew that Ed was involved with helping the kids, but I didn't realize, and seeing the kids come up here and down in the, they were just cross country, and it was hot, it was hard. It's hard riding a bike. I can't imagine hiking down these trails, and You know, it was an incredible, life-changing experience.
He showed up. He was the guy who actually showed up to your show, or, you know, called you or made sure that the relationship, your friendship continued. So I think, you know, sadly, most people don't do that. And so I think when someone does, you have to show up for them, right? We also learned that there's a lot of missing people up there in the forest that don't get found. The fact that we found him came down to complete unwillingness to not find him.
Ed just had this amazing energy, amazing soul, and amazing heart. And he also was hugely dedicated to his work and to the young people.
You know, I've known Ed for probably before that, I've probably known him for a good 10 years. But I always felt like Ed and I had a special connection. Somehow I didn't see him all the time. You know, we didn't do stuff a lot. We did a lot of dirt bike riding, and we had some social things in San Francisco, but it wasn't someone I saw all the time. But when I saw him, there was a special connection there. And what I realized during the search, or after the search, was that Ed had that connection with everybody. Like, everyone there was there because they thought that they had that special connection with Ed, and they had to come look for him because he would have been there looking for you. He just had that thing where he could just connect with people, and it was real.
I mean, I loved Ed. You know, he was a great guy. My youngest daughter wanted to marry him. She was only 6. I was gonna marry Ed.
One last question. I know it's going to be hard to pick, but what is the biggest thing you'll remember about this guy?
His smile and his big heart.
One of the other profound things, I think, from the search was that a lot of people exceeded their own expectations of what they could do, as far as physically and mentally. And I think that's part of why your question about why is the loved page still there and still active. And I think it's because people held on to that they did this, and we found him. The sheriffs didn't find him, the National Guard didn't find him, their drone and their search dogs, and you know, the professionals, they weren't the ones that found him, we found him. Anyone that was involved with that's never going to forget it because it was such a powerful thing.
Look at this fucking place, huh?
We're the Handsome Asians Motorcycle Club.
If you like what you saw, click here to subscribe or leave a comment below. And make sure to check out our movie, which recently won the People's Choice Award at the Motorcycle Film Festival in Brooklyn, New York, at vimeo.com/ondemand/dirtbag2.